Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I want to take some time to share my opinion about this press conference that Kanye West and Donald Trump had. This meeting, I did a prior video where I stated my opinion about the meeting, and I said that it would be non-productive and pointless. And I was proven correct by what I observed. But before I get started, I'm going to give people time to tune in. I have a lot on my mind tonight. This may be a long hangout. Hopefully, I'll try to keep it short because I'm not a fan of those super long hangouts that people do. But there's so much that's on my mind. First I'm going to start off with just my initial reaction. And then what I'm going to do is go through a lot of the things that Kanye West said and, deconstruct them and just provide my response to some of the outlandish things that this Negro had to say. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Shout out to Edna. I see you in the chat room. Thanks for tuning in. I just have so much that I want to talk about tonight. Dealing with this press conference. It is just outrageous. Shout out to Psycho. Thanks for tuning in. All right, so I'm going to get right into it. So Kanye West had this meeting with Donald Trump. This meeting that was touted and it received all this attention. There was so much press at that meeting that you would think that Donald Trump was meeting with a world leader or something. You would think that he was engaging in some kind of significant meeting. And this just shows a lot about the media and just how the media is so blinded by celebrity. I mean, here you have a man, Kanye West, who brings nothing, literally nothing to the table other than his fame. That's the only thing that he is bringing to the table. That is the only thing that he's bringing to the discussion. He's not bringing logic to the discussion. He's not bringing real demands to the discussion. He's not bringing any kind of tangible policy proposals to the discussion. All he is bringing to the table is his celebrity. But yet the media is so fixated on him, so fixated on celebrity. That when Donald Trump, for instance, has some important, significant meeting or some important, significant decision that he's making that will impact our lives, that receives far less attention. And it just shows you how much of a joke the media is. It tells you how sick the media is. And, just to sum it up before I go into point by point, I'll just say this, man. This guy, Kanye West, is an embarrassment to the Black race. I mean, he's literally an embarrassment. Back in the day, they used to say you're a credit to your race. Well, this guy is a discredit to his race. He has set the Black race back 400 years with this ridiculous spectacle of a meeting, this ridiculous spectacle of a press conference. I mean, this guy didn't bring any demands to the table. This guy didn't have any kind of leverage or any power to bring to the table. All this man primarily gave the people was a rambling, irrational statement that really didn't make many demands or any demands of this president. It was steeped in narcissism. It was self-centered. And that's typical of Kanye. He is a self-absorbed, egocentric maniac, man. He obviously has mental issues. I mean, this man, during his discussion, he was talking about his diagnosis, talking about being bipolar. This guy really needs to take his medication. I mean, this guy is an embarrassment. Where are his people? Where is his team to protect his brand, to make sure that he doesn't make himself look like a fool? Where are these people? Where are his friends at, man? To give him some advice, to give him some guidance, to guide him in the right direction. These people have just left this guy to make a complete ass out of himself and out of the Black community. Here you have a grown-ass man looking up to a white man to be his damn daddy and his damn mentor. An old-ass man looking up to another old man to be his mentor, to be his father figure. I mean, what the hell is wrong with this Negro, man? He's supposed to be coming there to propose some kind of policy changes, some kind of reforms, something, but instead he is literally acting like a fan, like a groupie, like a sycophant. And it's just sickening, man. This guy was talking about how much he loves Donald Trump. How can you make demands when you come into the negotiation table with that kind of posture, with such a weak posture, when you're looking up to the man that you're supposed to be making demands of? That scene with Kanye West, going around the president's desk and hugging the president and talking about how much he loves him, that reminded me of that scene from that music video that Dr. Dre did years ago called Dre Day, where they had this scene where Eazy-E was with the white Jewish manager, and the white Jewish manager was like basically dominating the situation, and you had Eazy-E sucking up to this white Jewish manager. And that's just the way Kanye West looked during that press conference when he went behind the desk and started hugging Donald Trump and talking about how much he loves Donald Trump. I mean, I am beginning to believe that these Make America Great hats are nothing but the new dunce caps. That's what they are. I mean, this guy, and I'm going to go into it a little bit later, he made all these outlandish statements about this Make America Great hat. I mean, this guy looks like a complete idiot, like a complete buffoon, like a complete joke. I mean, he reminds me of what the sergeant from Soldier Day talked about when he talked about the day of the Geechee is over with. He talked about, how you have these ignorant Negroes that embarrass the race and that have to be called out. And, Kanye West is taking on that role of the Geechee, of the coon, of the Sambo. I mean, this guy was incomprehensible. This guy was making some ridiculous statements. This guy was in a room full of press using all kinds of profanity in the White House. I mean, this guy is a joke. This guy is a fool. This guy is mentally ill and he needs help. He needs his medication. And the whole time, he's thinking that Donald Trump is praising him. Donald Trump said something about how he's a smart cookie. He said something about how what he said was pretty impressive. Donald Trump was patronizing this guy, but he wasn't smart enough. Kanye West wasn't smart enough to realize that they weren't laughing with him. They weren't celebrating him. They were literally laughing at Kanye West. Kanye West made a complete ass out of himself and out of his people, man. And we're going to get into it in a second, man. And, if I was a rap artist or if I was a celebrity, I would not want my brand associated with Kanye West at all, man. This guy is a complete buffoon. This guy is an embarrassment. This guy is no different than that character from Django, Steven. That's the role that this guy is playing. And that reminds me of another coon that was at that meeting, Jim Brown. Jim Brown actually said that he wasn't there to make any demands of the president. He was just there to support. And it reminded me again of that character, Steven. He's like basically the yes, sir, master type person in the background. That scene like where Steven and Django was talking about how much he missed his master and stuff. Going on and on about how much he missed his master. That's what Jim Brown reminded me of, man. And it's just sickening, man, to see Black men diminished to this degree. I mean, this guy, Kanye West, is literally in the sunken place. And you had these conservatives. But before I go into that, let me just say this about people associating with their brand with Kanye West. I mean, if I was a celebrity, again, I wouldn't want to be associated with him at all, with his tarnished, horrible brand at this point. And, Jay-Z is smart enough to realize that. Like I was reading some article about how Jay-Z and Beyoncé are distancing themselves from Kim Kardashian and Kanye West. I mean, Kanye West is a complete fool, man. And I'm going to get to your comments in a second. Shout out to Nikki Justice. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is go through some of the points that were made during this press conference or this meeting, step by step. I mean, first of all, one of the things that really irritated me is that this guy was actually lobbying for leniency for a notorious drug kingpin, Larry Hoover. Out of all the people in the world to advocate for, why are you going to the president to advocate for a notorious gangster, somebody that founded the Gangster Disciples in Chicago, one of the most violent gangs in this country, one of the gangs that's responsible for killing many people in Chicago, a gang that deals all kinds of drugs that is destroying Chicago, but yet you want to advocate for his freedom or advocate for leniency for this guy while at the same time you're complaining about black on black violence. That doesn't make any kind of sense at all. This man is a pariah, man. This guy, Larry Hoover, is an enemy to the black community, man. He created that gang that has had a devastating impact on the black community, both in terms of the violence and in terms of the drugs that plague our community. And even while this man was locked up, he was still running a criminal enterprise. But yet you have Kanye West advocating for this guy like he's some kind of hero or something, like he's some kind of political prisoner or something, like he's somebody that's a victim. Yet Kanye West was talking about the victim mentality, but yet he has no problem painting this notorious criminal, this notorious gangster as some kind of victim and stuff. Man, it is just mind-blowing. It's just outrageous. Out of all the people in the world to advocate for, you're going to advocate for the founder of the Gangster Disciples, man. How does that make any kind of sense? I mean, it's no different from these rap artists that celebrate Larry Hoover and Big Meech. They sing about this stuff, sing about people that have destroyed our community. That's like somebody doing some song singing about a traitor, an agent, a collaborator, because that's what these people are. These gangsters that participate in the destruction of the black community, they are enemies of the community. They're not to be celebrated and defended. You got black political prisoners locked away, but he's not advocating for them. He's not advocating for all those Black Panthers that are locked up in America's prisons on trumped up charges, as a result of the counterintelligence program. He's not advocating for them. He's not advocating for Mumia Abu Jamal. He's not advocating for Mutulu Shakur and all those other brothers and sisters that are still locked up for standing up during the 60s in the fight for black liberation. He's not advocating for them, but he's going to advocate for some criminals. And that whole point about the brothers and sisters that stood up, that are still in jail today because they took a stand for black people, most of those people are men. And it reminds me of that ridiculous point that foolish woman on here, Cynthia G, constantly makes about how black people haven't, black men in particular haven't done anything to fight for black liberation. Well, you got black people that are still in jail today who fought for our liberation. Black men in jail today, putting in that work and doing that bid for the people. But yet you have some YouTube personality who's sitting in the lap of luxury, has the luxury to talk all this BS behind a computer screen while these people put in the real work for the people. But again, my point is simple, man. Why advocate for a gangster when there are so many other people that you could be advocating for? Now, the next point I want to go on is this. This guy Kanye West was rambling about an infinite number of universes, alternative universes. And, he was talking about how Larry Hoover was locked up for doing something positive. Again, he wasn't locked up for doing something positive. He was a gangster disciple. He founded that gang. Another thing is, man, this talk about these multiple universes just tells you just how nutty this guy Kanye West is. I mean, here he is in a serious discussion with the president of the United States, and he's rambling about some theory about multiple universes. This man needs his medication. And then, this guy went on to talk about black people. Again, feeding these negative stereotypes about Black people that these conservatives love to put out here. They love to put this idea out here that Black people are lazy, that Black people are on welfare. You know, this guy was saying that, you know, there's this idea that Black people have to be Democrats and that welfare is the reason why a lot of Black people end up being Democrats. That is so untrue. I mean, that is total nonsense. But yet this is the narrative that this guy is putting out here. And the thing is, white conservatives love this stuff. They love when Negroes say this kind of idiotic stuff because it provides them with cover. They don't have to make the racist statements themselves when they have these bootlicking, tap dancing, ass kissing Uncle Tom Negroes, you know, coons and sambos to make statements for them, to serve as their mouthpieces. And that's what this guy, Kanye West, is doing. Black people did not become Democrats because of welfare. They didn't. I mean, part of it has to do with the civil rights movement. You had a Democratic president that pushed through major civil rights legislation that fundamentally changed this society in many ways. And then with that, you had a backlash. You know, a lot of conservatives left the Democratic Party and they went into the Republican Party because of the Republican Party's Southern strategy that was designed to appeal to the most racist elements of society. So with that shift, and we saw how the Republicans had an agenda that was hostile to the interests of Black people. We saw, like, for instance, Nixon and his whole war on drugs, which was nothing but a war on Black people. And it's been documented. I've done videos about this, about how you had top Nixon officials admit that that war on drugs was really just a war on Black people and a war on the left. That's what it was all about. So with that shift, you had a lot of Black people turn to the Democratic Party, you know, because they realized that later on it was the Democrats. And I'm not going to say that I fully support the Democrats on anything. You all know that I voted independent in the presidential election. I have a lot of criticism for Democrats like the Clintons and all that kind of stuff, and even President Obama. But it was the Democrats that supported affirmative action. It was the Democrats that supported many policies that are beneficial to the Black community. You know, while they're not perfect, and yes, you could say they are the lesser of two evils, but they're not as hostile to the interests of Black people as the Republicans are. Black people are using reasoning skills when they decide which party that they're going to support. It's the Republicans that are fighting to suppress African-American voters. It's the Republicans that tried to and succeeded at gutting the Voting Rights Act. That was Republicans that did that. It's Republicans that are trying to destroy affirmative action, one of the few programs that benefits African Americans and provides them with an opportunity to higher education. It's the Republicans that support these hostile criminal justice policies, such as stop and frisk, like President Trump supports. Stop and frisk and racial profiling. That's the Republicans that support that stuff. So there's a reason why our people tend to vote Democrat. And I don't think that the Democrats are the answer to our problem by any stretch of the imagination. I think, you know, obviously, you know, I think that we need to have alternatives. We need to support third-party candidates when appropriate. So don't get it messed up. And then Kanye West went on to say some ridiculous stuff about, you know, prison rates going up because of the lack of mental health treatments, as if the problem of mass incarceration is just a problem of mental health. That's not the reason why you have large numbers of Black men incarcerated today. You have large numbers of Black men incarcerated because of that war on drugs, which is a war on Black people. That's why you have large numbers of Black men incarcerated. When you take away all these different opportunities, you take away job opportunities, you take away education opportunities, and you have communities that are plagued by poverty, and then you put drugs in that community, you're going to see a lot of people selling drugs. You're going to see a lot of people engaged in violence as a result of that drug trade. And you're going to have a lot of Black men locked up. That is the reason why the mass incarceration is a problem in the Black community. This is well documented in Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow. It is not over some mental health treatment not being available. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Then this guy went on to talk about how people tried to tell him not to wear that "Make America Great" hat, and he sees that hat gives him power, that he feels like he's Superman with that hat on. That guy is an idiot. He's running around with a hat on that he doesn't even understand the significance of. He doesn't even understand the significance of that message, "Make America Great Again." Making America great again has absolutely nothing to do with Black people. It's about making America white again. That's what that is about. That's a subliminal message to Donald Trump's base, which are these ignorant, racist, redneck crackers. That's his base. It is what it is. And that's who he's appealing to with that message. There are similarities between the messages of the KKK and the messages of this Trump administration. But this guy, Kanye West, is too clueless to understand. This guy, Kanye West, is a buffoon and a clown, running around with a white supremacist hat on, thinking that he's Superman. I mean, how lost can you be, man? That "Make America Great Again" slogan was in response to Obama being elected president. It was in response to the rise of a Black president and the rise of a different electorate. That's what it was a response to. It was a call for making America white again. That is why these people that support Donald Trump are so hostile to immigrants of color, because they fear the browning of America. They fear what they call white genocide. That is the core message that is underlying this Trump administration. That is the core message that is behind that "Make America Great Again" slogan. But yet you have this buffoon, Kanye West, running around with this stupid hat, thinking it gives him power. This guy is running around with a dunce cap on, as I said before. That "Make America Great Again" hat is nothing but the new dunce cap, especially when these ignorant Negroes run around with that hat on. Now, I can understand a white supremacist wearing that hat. I can understand a Nazi wearing that hat. I can understand a Klansman wearing that hat. But I can't understand a Negro wearing that hat. This Negro has lost his damn mind. And, it's just another reminder that this dude is in the sunken place, man. I mean, he's so deep in the sunken place. There is no hope for this guy. He's lost. He's completely lost, man. And I just wish somebody would, flash a cell phone camera at his face or something to wake him up, man. But this guy is completely lost, man. Completely lost. And then another thing that was real troubling to me, man, and I kind of touched on this earlier, but it was this whole thing about how he lacked male energy growing up because his parents got divorced. And then he also went on to talk about how he's with a white, a family of women. His wife's family is primarily women and stuff like that. So it's a lot of female energy and stuff like that. And basically he was saying that he's drawn to Donald Trump's like masculine energy. The fact that he's like an alpha in his mind, an alpha male who's assertive and aggressive and all that kind of stuff. He said that he's drawn to that. And that's one of the reasons why he admires Donald Trump. And I just think that it's a damn shame, as I said before, for a grown-ass man to be looking for a daddy figure in a white man. A white man he doesn't even know, that he's not even related to, that he doesn't have any real relationship with. Just some guy that happens to be president. He's looking to this white man as some kind of father figure. I mean, this dude is completely lost. This dude is completely bonkers. And that's not why you embrace a politician. You embrace a politician because of their positions on issues. When this guy talks about how much he loves Donald Trump, he don't say anything about like Donald Trump's policies. He's not saying anything about what good Donald Trump is doing. He's operating in the realm of ignorance. He's operating in the realm of his mental illness by talking about energy and stuff like that, and vibes and stuff like that, instead of talking about concrete things that matter when it comes to politicians. But this is the kind of Negro Donald Trump likes to be around. You know, these Negroes that are clueless, these Negroes that are ignorant, these Negroes that bring zero demands to the table, zero pressure to the table. You know, these Negroes that are just going to heap praise upon him like cheerleaders cheering on their football team. This is what he likes. He loves being surrounded by these types of buffoons and yes men. And this guy, Kanye West, is just another one of these people, man. Just another one of these people. And, you know, here they were, you know, supposed to be having some discussion about some policies and stuff like that, about criminal justice, about jobs. And those things were just barely touched upon in that conversation. The bulk of the conversation centered around Kanye West talking about himself, you know, bragging about himself and, you know, talking about his mental state and talking about how Donald Trump gave him courage and, you know, using all these words like Yeezus effect or Yeezy effect and stuff like that. The conversation was centered around him. It wasn't centered around how to actually improve the situation in Chicago. Those were tangential things that he touched upon, but they weren't the focus. And then this buffoon doubled down on his statement about the 13th Amendment, about abolishing it. Now, he talked about how he doesn't like the fact that it has a trap door with it, you know, basically an exception for people who have committed crimes. But I mean, despite all that criticism that this guy faced, despite all the reaction that this guy faced, this buffoon took that opportunity to double down on stupid by talking about how he supports the abolishment, you know, the abolition of the 13th Amendment. Just bear with me a second. Yeah, I mean, he talked about that, man. It's just crazy, man, because if you abolish the 13th Amendment, that just basically means that Black people can be slaves again. The 13th Amendment abolished involuntary servitude. It abolished slavery, but yet you got this fool talking about abolishing the 13th Amendment. That's like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. You know, of course, the bathwater is dirty and stuff like that, but you don't throw out the baby with it. And that's what he's doing by talking about the abolition of the 13th Amendment. This guy, despite being called out for this, you know, he still doubles down. He doesn't modify his statement. He doesn't say, well, I think that you need to amend it so that you get rid of the exception for people who have committed crimes. No, he doesn't say that. He just says it needs to be abolished. And this comes after his ridiculous statements about slavery being a choice. This guy is lost. This guy is clueless. And it's just so much of a disgrace, man. And then he was talking about how if the president doesn't look good, then we don't look good. So because of that, he thinks he should heap praise upon the president and, you know, wish the best for the president and this and that. You don't wish the best for somebody that's trying to destroy your community. You don't wish the best for somebody that doesn't view police brutality as an issue. And that brings me to another point. I'm going to put a pin in that for now. I'm going to go back to that point about the police brutality and the Black on Black violence in a second. But this guy, you know, has this idea that you shouldn't disrespect the president. You got to make him look good. You don't make a man look good that wants to destroy your community. A man that doesn't give a damn about police brutality, despite the fact that it is plaguing the Black community. You don't make somebody look good that's trying to get rid of affirmative action, one of the few programs that enables Black people to have certain opportunities to higher education. You don't make somebody like that look good. You don't make somebody that wants to suppress your vote look good, and you don't heap praise upon that person and talk about how much you love that person. You don't heap praise on somebody that has made racist statements. It talked about he didn't want black people counting his money. Somebody that referred to black football players who protest as sons of bitches. Somebody that referred to an entire continent that we come from, that black people come from, as shithole countries, and referred to Haiti that way. You don't heap praise upon such a person. What does Kanye West have to say about all that? We're going to get into that in a second. But I just had to touch on that. And then somebody asked Kanye West about his statements that he made about George Bush years ago after Hurricane Katrina. He said that George Bush doesn't care about black people. And the reporter basically said, well, some people have said that Donald Trump doesn't care about black people for all the reasons that I previously stated. But here's Kanye's response. He basically backed out of his statements that he made about George Bush. He said that he was being emotional and that he had been programmed to think from a victimized mentality. This is what Kanye West said, from a welfare mentality. And that's why he made those statements about George Bush. So basically, he's brushing aside those statements. He's disowning those statements and saying that basically that was the wrong thing to do. And I think that that's weak as hell. I think that that's a coward's act. And it just shows that this Negro is in a sunken place. The Katrina was a disaster. I mean, I don't know how many of y'all remember it, but many people died during Hurricane Katrina. And the government's response was a disaster. It was a disaster. You had black people, many of the people were black, in dire straits, and the government was not acting prompt enough. George Bush at the time was in an airplane flying over the disaster, chilling in that fancy Air Force One while people were suffering on the ground. Kanye West was right when he said that Bush didn't care about black people, but now he's trying to backpedal on that. Again, more confirmation that this Negro is in a sunken place. And then he said that black people get caught up in the idea of racism over the idea of industry. And he was talking about this victim mentality and all that kind of stuff. Again, all I can do is shake my head, man. Because this is a man, Donald Trump, that's proven himself over and over again to be one of the most racist presidents that we've had in a long time. This guy pandered to white supremacists. It's no coincidence that the KKK endorsed this guy. It's no coincidence that the alt-right endorsed this guy. It's no coincidence that racists like David Duke and Richard Spencer endorsed this guy. It's not a coincidence. And it is not a coincidence that this man, Donald Trump, gave those white supremacists in Charlottesville a pass. But yet Kanye West wants to ignore that. He wants to ignore that whole concept of racism. And for whatever reason, he wants to ignore that and embrace this man that has zero respect for him and zero respect for black people. Then this guy went on to talk about this police violence, police brutality issue. And he basically did the typical Negro coon dance, where you deflect from that subject and you talk about black on black violence. He did say that police brutality was a problem, but he mainly deflected and talked about this black people kill each other more than the police do type of argument, shifting the discussion away from the very real issue of police brutality and talking about some black on black violence, while he's trying to defend one of the people that are responsible for some of the most horrific violence in Chicago and around the country. I mean, this guy's logic is completely gone, man. This guy made a complete fool out of himself. A complete fool out of himself, man. He is a disgrace. He's an embarrassment, man. He is just as embarrassing to the black race as one of these blackface dancers, you know, the people, the minstrels that used to put on the black face and wear the white gloves and the red, bright red lipstick over their lips, making their lips look huge, wearing the knotted wigs, you know, talking crazy and acting crazy and dancing crazy and stuff like that, buck dancing with their eyes all bucked out and stuff like that. That's what Kanye West reminded me of during that press conference. And the fact that you got all this media surrounding this fool just tells you again, like the media's priorities, man. How the media is all about sensationalism instead of actual things that matter. And then he went on, Kanye West went on to talk about how liberals use racism to control people. And he was saying that, you know, people asked him about Trump being racist or whatever. And he was basically saying he's not going to let racism control him, basically saying, well, just because people say that Donald Trump is racist, that's not going to make me not support him. You know, that you're not going to control me and make me not support him by raising this issue of racism. I mean, this guy makes that blanket statement, you know, that blanket statement without even addressing these underlying allegations of racism, without addressing the fact that Donald Trump encouraged his supporters to attack black people, without addressing the fact that Donald Trump was sued for housing discrimination twice by the Justice Department, without addressing any of that stuff, without addressing the racist statements, you know, towards Mexicans and all that kind of stuff. This guy basically says, well, I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want y'all to control me by making me decide I'm not going to support him because he's a racist. You know, and I got to go back to that police issue, man. Of course, police brutality, I mean, of course, inner city violence is a major problem, but you don't deflect away from the discussion about police brutality by talking about inner city violence, especially following this conviction of that guy, Jason Van Dyke, for killing Laquan McDonald and all these other examples of police abusing their power. These people are law enforcement. And the reason why this is a major issue is because it's systemic. You have problems of police harassment all around this country. And you have problems where more likely than not, these guys walk when they kill black people. More likely than not, they walk and they're celebrated and often rehired. And you actually have one of these people who killed a black man basically become like an instructor for how to deal with certain situations in the field as a police officer. This is how they treat them. Those police officers that killed Freddie Gray, they received an award for that. Literally received an award. This is what happens. These are the people that are supposed to be entrusted to protect and serve, and all they do is some of them brutalize and attack and harass black people. And often, too often, there's no justice. That's why that's a priority. When somebody on the street engages in street violence, if they are found, they are convicted, unlike these police. That's why those are two completely separate issues that have to be addressed separately. And Kanye West can run from that issue of racism all he wants, but we see right through it, man. And we just see how completely lost this guy is. Now, this guy, Kanye West, was asked about guns, and he said this. He basically said, well, legal guns are not the problem. The problem is illegal guns. I mean, this guy sounds like a complete idiot, man. I mean, does he not realize how these criminals get guns? You know, often guns are purchased legally at first, and then they're put into the so-called black market. Often people will purchase guns in states where you have loose gun control laws. They will purchase guns in bulk, and then they sell them to the criminal element. That's what happens frequently. But Kanye West ignores that. He doesn't even realize that. Because again, this is a guy that admits that he doesn't read. This is a guy who hasn't who has never voted in his life, having a discussion with the president and actually having the audacity to contemplate running for president. I mean, this is just so ludicrous, man. He claims to be concerned about the problem of violence in the community, but he doesn't want to deal with the issue of gun control and its impact. And then this guy suggested, or outright stated, that he wants to see Trump and Colin Kaepernick together wearing Make America Great Again hats. I mean, all I can do is shake my head at that comment, man. He wants Donald Trump to be in the same room with Colin Kaepernick, and Kaepernick is wearing a Make America Great hat after Donald Trump has disrespected him, attacked him, and encouraged people not to hire him, encouraged NFL teams not to hire Kaepernick, and has called people like Kaepernick sons of bitches. You actually expect Colin Kaepernick to hang out with Donald Trump. Kaepernick was correct for not joining this circus, this charade that Kanye West participated in today. I just can't. All I can do is shake my head at this nonsense. And then, Kanye West had the nerve to say we're one country. And no, we're not. We're not one country, man. I mean, physically, you would say, yes, this is one country. But when you look at how divided this nation is, how divided this nation is on race lines, on class lines, on gender lines, when you look at the racism that it continues to be pervasive in this country, the anti-immigrant sentiment that is pervasive in this country, you can't say that we're one country. When you look at how the Democrats and the Republicans are going at it with each other, when you look at what happened with the Kavanaugh hearings, you can't say that this is one country. All that is wishful thinking. And another thing that this guy, Kanye West, said is that all we have is today. Time is a myth, and we shouldn't be thinking about, basically suggesting that we shouldn't be thinking about the future and we shouldn't be thinking about the past. That is nonsense, man. If you are talking to a politician about the need for certain policies, that in its very nature is projecting into the future about what will happen to future generations with changes in policy. In fact, in the past informs our present and our future. It's no surprise that he would say this kind of stuff, especially given his statements about slavery. And I'm going to get to your comments in a second, man. I just had to vent on this, man. It's just so completely crazy, man. They love to have these kinds of buffoons as Black spokespeople. I saw some news article titles where they were talking about how there's some conference on Black leadership. There's going to have that guy, Ben Carson, and what's that lady's name? The one that was on Fox. Stacey Dash. Yeah, Stacey Dash is supposed to be featured, and some of these other Negro coons are supposed to be featured. They're being described as leaders, even though they don't have any real followers, even though they're not recognized in the Black community as leaders. And it reminds me of what Malcolm X said about how these people, when they don't like the real leaders in the Black community, they appoint their own leaders to represent the Black community. Just like during colonial times, they would install these puppets to be their mouthpieces. And that's what they're doing with these kinds of buffoons like a Stacey Dash and a Ben Carson. These people don't have any real following in the Black community. Their following and their support is white-based. These people are not leaders. They're not the new voices of the Black community, just like that buffoon Candace Owens. She's not no genuine leader in the Black community. She doesn't have any genuine Black following. She is a prop. She is a mouthpiece put into place by the right wing that's predominantly white. So yeah, I just had to get that off my chest, and I won't reiterate some of the points that I made earlier, but it's just a disgrace to see this guy, um, Kanye West, just basically falling at Donald Trump's feet, shining his shoes and kissing his ass, and not making any kind of demands of him. And in some ways, that reminds me of how, you know, some of these black leaders dealt with Obama. Instead of like really pressing him with hardcore demands, they simply heap praise upon him. And that's just unacceptable. We need to know how to deal with these politicians. And you know, the thing that I was saying about these Negro puppets, that can apply to Kanye West too. The only reason why Fox News is celebrating this guy is because he's talking about his support for Donald Trump. If he was talking about any other politician, if he was doing these same type of antics in support of Democrats or in support of some third party, these same people that are heaping all this praise on him will be talking about him just like I'm talking about him now. And I would still do the same type of video if I saw him behaving like this to the Democrats, because it's an embarrassment. So yeah, I just had to get that on my system. So let me see what y'all are saying. Man, it's a lot of comments. So I'm gonna try to get through some of the comments before I close out at least. Shout out to Miss Mahogany. Tanisha Wilson said Kanye West is ridiculous. Absolutely, man. Yeah, he's definitely out of control. So DJ Wiz said Kanye West has been lost for the past 10 years. I'm glad Jay and Bay disassociated themselves from him. Yeah, man. They probably like, man, this guy is crazy, man. And then that kind of reminds me of that song that Jay-Z did. He said, if everybody's crazy, then you're the one that's insane. Because Kanye West, I mean, something's wrong with him, man. For real. Yeah, DJ Wiz said he hated Bush and loves Trump. I don't get it. Me neither, man. And it's like a bad situation. I thought we would never have a president as horrible as George Bush, as many people have said. And now it's like with this Trump guy in the White House, man, it's like, man, Bush wasn't that bad compared to Trump. Yeah, Jim Brown looked like he was out of it, man. It's just a shame that he just sat there as a Negro prop. He didn't make a single demand of Donald Trump. All he did was serve as a yes man for Donald Trump. What a disgrace. I mean, how do you go from being a proud and strong black activist, you know, somebody that people look up to? Like when people talk about how we need to have more athletes as advocates and as activists, they often point to Jim Brown. But something's happened, like with his old age, just like he's destroying his own legacy, man. How do you go from being a civil rights activist to becoming some damn tap dancing, bootlicking coon, man? This is just a damn shame, man. Victoria said, I don't know if I believe in MK Ultra, but Kanye's mentality is making me think it's real. Yeah, I feel you on that, man. I'm like, what happened to this Negro, man? It's like it makes you wonder if he really is literally in the sunken place, man. He went from George Bush doesn't like black or doesn't care about black people to Donald Trump is awesome. I love Donald Trump and all that other kind of stuff to saying like, um, you know, he had a victim mentality when he spoke out about George Bush. I mean, wow. Diamond Girl said he's becoming an expert at being an idiot, a buffoon. And DJ Wiz said he's been going downhill ever since he snatched the mic from Taylor Swift. Yeah, man, that's so crazy, man. And it's just a horrible contrast. I mean, here you have like Taylor Swift, for instance. You know, this woman announced her support for some candidates, and because of that, she had record numbers of people register to vote online and all that kind of stuff. I just wish that more black uh, um, public figures would utilize their celebrity for something positive. And you do have examples of that. And I talk about them on my other New Possibilities channel. But too often, you know, they don't do enough. There's more things that they could be doing. Victoria Welsh said he might as well put on the top hat and some tap dance shoes, man. Yeah, man. Because that's basically what he was doing. Miss Mahogany said, I've come across a few of our own people who worship 45. All I can do is look at them. My Grams told me not to argue with crazy. Yeah, I feel you on that, man. Like, it's no point in arguing with crazy people because you got to be out your damn mind as a black person to support Donald Trump. I mean, how many more examples do you need before you realize this man doesn't have the interests of black people at heart? Yeah, and the way Kanye West was rambling, you know, and just saying stuff that made zero sense, man. It just made it clear to me that the guy has some mental issues. The guy needs help. The guy needs advice. The guy needs his medication. Where are his supporters? Where is his staff to guide him in the right direction, as I said earlier, man? DJ Wiz said, I think when his mom passed away, he lost a piece of his sanity. Yeah, that's what a lot of people have said. Diamond Girl said, Jim Brown looks like he's in the sunken place too. Yes, he does, man. Man, it's just a shame, man, to see yourself live so long to, you know, after having a productive life to just transform into a damn coon, man. Wow. So Unique View said, you are wrong. She's talking about, or he's talking about me. You have no brand. I don't even know what that person is talking about. Hold on one second, John. Yeah, thanks, Nikki Justice. Yeah, get those likes up. Pat said, I like Kanye, but he did say he has suffered from mental illness. Yeah, I mean, I like his music. I do like his music. I can't lie about that. Like, I like his production more so than his raps, but I like him as a musician. And it's just a shame, man, to see him just destroy his brand like this and destroy his reputation like this, man. And it's just a shame that he doesn't have a team around him that would like prevent him from imploding and destroying himself, man. I mean, he's had some weird interviews that he's done with TMZ. It's like anytime this guy is allowed to just go and talk and you know share his opinions about stuff, he always says something crazy, man. Yeah, so Hollow Ninja said I saw the video of Kanye talking to 45 face to face, and I was shaking my MFing head. Yeah, I feel you, man. And for those of you who have not seen that conversation between Trump and Kanye West and that press conference, I will have a link in the description box to this video so you could check it out. I would show segments of it here, but I don't want to deal with copyright issues and all that stuff. So I'll just post it in the description box so that y'all can check it out. Yeah, so somebody said, can you please block Nikki View? Yes, I will block that person. Yeah, he did used to be pro-black. I mean, it's like something really happened to him along the way, unfortunately, man. Victoria Welsh said he's been buck broken. Wow. Yeah, he's coming up on winning that Coon of the Year award for real. He's going putting in that work for that award. He's trying to earn that. Yeah, so a lot of people saying please delete unique view. Yeah, I got rid of that person. Yeah, Kanye is all over the place. Psycho said, laughing my ass off at alternative universe. Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of something out of a comic book, man. I remember back in the day, like I used to read DC comics, and in the comic books, they had like all these alternate universes, and even on that show, like in sci-fi, they talk about that a lot. Like in like Star Trek, the old Star Trek, the original Star Trek, they had something about alternative universes and this and that. But it's like, I mean, that kind of discussion is more suited for like a sci-fi convention or like Comic-Con or something like that. Or just like some friendly discussion between some comic book geeks or some sci-fi fans. That is not the kind of discussion that you bring to the White House when you're supposed to be talking about some important policy questions. Yeah, DJ Wiz said, you know you lost if you're married to a Kardashian. Yeah, that's true, man. Just look at what happened to all those people that got mixed up with them, man. Nikki Justice said, such language. Yeah, I need to tone it down a little bit. I just get fired up on this, man. Yeah, even me, sometimes I Ghost Rider said declare war on Kanye. Yeah, I thought about putting this video on my I Declare War channel, but I was like, no, I'm just gonna put it on this one. Because somebody asked me like if I was gonna do a video about this, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it, and they asked me on this channel, so I said, why not just go ahead and do it on this channel? Man, it's just crazy, man. Kanye West is lost. And I agree, Nikki Justice. I can't follow his thought process either. DJ Wiz said Kanye West may just actually end up being president in a few years, seeing how the White House will just let anybody in nowadays. Hmm. Yeah, and it sounds like Kanye West was like more so concerned about tax benefits for his own business enterprises. And he was kind of suggesting that, well, those tax benefits may lead to more jobs and stuff like that. But it seems like his primary motivation was his own business interests. And somebody that has that kind of attitude, they're not fit to be some kind of advocate for Black people, man. It's like, again, these people don't want to deal with real Black people that's going to make demands on them. So they get these artificial, fake, subpar people that aren't going to make any demands of them. They bring those kind of people to the table, man. He's not bringing the Congressional Black Caucus to the table for any kind of policy discussion. He's not bringing any kind of experts like Michelle Alexander, or people like that. People that have solid knowledge and information about these key important issues. He would rather bring somebody this unread, that doesn't know a damn thing to the discussions, because he knows that such a person is an intellectual midget and is not going to make any kind of real demands to the president. Yeah, it's just crazy, man. It's just really crazy. Yeah, and I feel y'all, you who was saying like Ariane. I feel what you're saying, like in terms of Kanye West, and watching that video. It was really hard to watch. I mean, and some people said they couldn't watch it because it's so embarrassing, man. He made a complete fool out of himself. It's like you feel bad for him that he's doing such a horrible job and presenting himself in such a horrible kind of way. You feel sad for this guy. You feel sorry for him, and it's real pathetic. So I understand why people couldn't finish watching that that interview that he did, or that press conference that they had. I mean, this guy doesn't know how ridiculous he looks. But this is somebody, after all, who was trying to sell Confederate clothing. I mean, this is, after all, a man who had a casting call where he only wanted like non-black women to participate in the casting call. I mean, so at this point, nothing surprises me with this guy. This is somebody, after all, who said slavery was a choice. The guy is lost, man. Yeah, he was like a Stan. He literally was like Donald Trump's Stan. That's how he was. And how can a Stan make any kind of demands of a president, man? And then he's talking about, yeah, and somebody brought up a good point about like people talking about how Trump is giving black people jobs and stuff like that. But they can't cite one policy that this man has enacted that led to some jobs. Most what we're seeing is a continuation of Obama's legacy, the changes that he put in place, the stimulus and all that kind of stuff that made it possible for the unemployment rate to go down. But nobody wants to give him credit for it. They just want to assume that Donald Trump has something to do with it, even though they can't point to one single policy that this man had passed in Congress that helped the unemployment rate go down. And then he was talking about love, like how we need to love. I mean, these problems are so much more complicated than that. I mean, love is not going to get rid of these problems that we see in this country, man. He sounded like one of these hippies that had too much, smoked too much weed, one of these hippies who dropped too much acid. That's how this guy was sounding during that interaction with President Trump. Just bear with me a second. So Jenny Kiss said he seemed as if he's in a state of mania, calling that hat a cape. Yeah, man, that's talking about he felt like Superman with that stupid hat on his head, man. Man, this is just crazy. Just bear with me a second. Yeah, and Miss Mahogany said that Kanye West was trying to shame all black people. Kanye West knows what he's doing because the Carters are close friends with the Obamas. he wanted to one up them. Yeah, it may come down to that. This may be part of the rivalry that he has with Jay-Z and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, he's not winning. He's losing big time, man. Yeah, he did run up to him like he's his daddy, man. It's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. Miss Mahogany said, I would love to know Kanye West's real thoughts on the Central Park 5 case. Those young men lost their youth on false charges. Now, Melvin A628 says he means to say amend the 13th Amendment to eliminate the prison clause. No, I mean, obviously that's what he should say, but that's not what he said. I mean, he's been corrected. You know, a lot of people have raised this issue with him, like it's been all over the media. But yet, during that interview today, during that discussion with Donald Trump, this man raised that issue again. Um, you know, basically said that it should be abolished, despite knowing. I just wonder if he even sat down and read the 13th Amendment. I mean, this is a guy, after all, who doesn't read, man. And by doubling down on that ridiculous statement, he didn't help himself. He could have just said at that point, after all that controversy, he could have said, well, the 13th Amendment needs to be amended. But that's not what he did. Yeah, so that's just problematic, man. There was another point that I was going to make based on that statement. It may come up later, so I'll continue on. Yeah, he is. That's part of why he's saying. That is why he's saying in the 13th Amendment, Jenny. That's why he's saying it. Um, but it's like, again, like I was saying, it's like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. That's not how you deal with that issue of mass incarceration or, you know, private industry profiting from the prison industrial complex. You don't deal with that issue by completely abolishing the 13th Amendment, an amendment that ended slavery. What you do is just amend that amendment, as somebody was saying before, so that that issue is addressed. Just bear with me. I'm just looking through the comments. Yeah, a lot of those talking points are straight from Turning Point USA. It's like they put out talking points, and those are, you know, the same tired talking points that Candace Owens used. But at least she understands like how to make those arguments. Kanye West only knows the rhetoric without understanding like the arguments and the counter arguments to various positions. So he really just sounds like a fool when he talks about the stuff. So I'm just gonna try to make my way through these comments. Yeah, Psycho, most of them are bought and paid for, man. And Kanye West doesn't realize that he's just being pimped for a photo op. And it's like with these crucial midterm elections, this guy's going to support a Donald Trump. I mean, does he have any idea like how devastating it is going to be for African Americans now that you have a Kavanaugh appointed to the Supreme Court? Okay, just bear with me a second. Yeah, Kanye West is a disaster, man. He doesn't realize how far he set the black race back with his with his cooning and buffooning and his stupidity, man. He's thinking that Donald Trump is praising him when Donald Trump is really laughing at him. All right. Yeah, so I want to thank y'all for tuning in. I'm not going to have time to go through every single comment. But I want to thank you again for tuning in. For those of you who are watching the playback, please rate, comment, and subscribe. Also, get the likes up, hit the notification bell so that you'll know immediately when I'm posting content on this channel. And with that, I'm going to say peace and blessings. Thank you for your support.